ever get that feeling, of being caught between two places? Like
Mm.
you really miss somewhere you used to be, but it doesn't feel quite like home anymore either.
Yeah.
That's kind of the tug of war we're diving into today. We're looking at the story of Manjiro, a Japanese castaway who ends up apprenticed in 19th century America.
Okay, interesting.
And our sources, they're fictionalized, but they give us a really vivid picture of this real historical figure. And they tackle these big questions, right, about belonging, identity, and what home really means.
Yeah.
So we're kind of dropped right into it. Manjiro's life at the cooper shop. They make barrels.
Ah,
And it's not exactly a warm welcome, right?
right.
It's like imagine being plucked from your life, everything you know, and then suddenly you're thrown into this freezing cold workshop,
Mm-hmm.
and you're constantly hungry and stuff.
I bet.
That's what Manjiro's dealing with. And the way the author describes it, you can practically feel the chill yourself.
I can.
And that's what I found interesting, how much the setting, like the physical place, seemed to reflect what was going on with Manjiro emotionally.
Oh, absolutely. It's actually a pretty common technique authors use. The physical environment becomes kind of a metaphor for what's happening inside the character's head.
Oh,
So that chili shop, it's not just cold, right? It represents how lost and alone Manjiro feels in this completely new world.
well, that's really interesting. It adds this whole other layer, right? Like the reader feels that chill right along with Manjiro.
Yeah, for sure.
And it gets even more intense when we get to Manjiro's fever dreams. He keeps seeing his mother back in Japan, but he can't quite make out her face. It's like she's just out of reach. What did you make of that?
Well, dreams are powerful, right? Especially when you're talking about symbols in this one. It
Yeah.
really struck me because it's not just that he misses his mother, which, totally natural in his situation, but he can't quite grasp onto the memory of her. And that makes his homesickness even stronger, even more intense.
Hmm.
And I think it taps into that, very human fear, that fear of forgetting the people we love most.
Yeah, definitely. And here's where things get kind of interesting. You'd think, right, being stuck in this awful situation, that all he would be thinking about is home.
Right. Yeah.
And he does. He misses Japan intensely.
Yes.
Even the things he used to complain about.
Really?
Yeah. But then there's this other thing, clearly he cared about that American family that he was living with before. So it's like, which is it? Is it even possible to be like homesick for two places at once?
It's so interesting, isn't it? And what it highlights, I think what Manjiro's experience highlights is that belonging, it's about more than just a place, right? It's
Yeah.
more than just location. He's caught between these two cultures. He's never fully part of either one.
It's tricky.
Yeah, and he's longing for that familiarity, that sense of home. But at the same time, you get the sense that he knows even if he went back to Japan, it wouldn't erase everything that, he's experienced in America. It's kind of like he's outgrown his old life, but he hasn't quite found his place in this new world.
Right, exactly. It's like he's in between. And that really resonates with, I think a lot of people, right? Immigrants, children of immigrants, anyone who's ever felt like they didn't quite fit in.
Absolutely, yeah. That sense of being betwixt and between, belonging everywhere and nowhere all at the same time.
Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah.
And speaking of feeling out of place, there's this scene where Manjiro, he's having another fever dream.
Okay.
And Mrs. Whitfield, the mother from the American family, she appears to him, and she tells him, and this is a quote, "We've brought you home." And I don't know, on the surface, it seems like, okay, that's nice. She's trying to be comforting. But it just felt, I don't know. What did you think about that?
It's a great example of how loaded language can be.
Right.
Even a simple phrase can reveal so much. On the one hand, of course, Mrs. Whitfield is trying to comfort him, right? Trying to offer him some kind of solace.
Yeah.
But knowing what we know about Manjiro, about what he's going through, it just kind of underscores how complicated his situation is. He's told, "You're home," but does he feel like he's home? That's the thing. And I think that gap between what's being said and what he's actually experiencing, I think that's where the heartbreak is.
It does. It reminds me of, when you're doing a puzzle and you have a piece and it's almost the right fit, but not quite.
Yeah.
And you try to make it work, because you want it to work so badly.
Of course.
But it just won't quite slide into place.
And that's Manjiro. That's Manjiro's struggle. He's desperately looking for that sense of belonging, that feeling of truly being home. But it's just out of reach.
Manjiro's story, it's far from over.
Right.
But just that struggle, that search to find his place, to belong somewhere, it really got to me.
Yeah.
Because he's dealing with so much. Like the cold, the hunger,
It's a lot.
this deep, deep homesickness.
But he keeps going. He doesn't let it crush him.
He's a tough kid.
That resilience. Do you find that that's something that pops up a lot in stories about, displacement, people having to leave their homes?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that ability to to persevere, to just keep going, especially when things are so hard.
Yeah.
That's something we connect with. Like deep down, I think that's something very human. And Manjiro, it's like his story reminds us that even when we feel totally lost and alone, like we still have that strength inside to, to put one foot in front of the other, to keep moving.
It's almost like his story becomes this testament to the human spirit, that no matter how overwhelming things get, we have this incredible capacity to overcome them. And there's something really, I don't know, there's something kind of quietly heroic about that. It's the everyday perseverance.
Yeah.
It's not always about these grand gestures, right?
Right.
Sometimes it's about those small acts of courage, like getting out of bed, facing the day, even when all you want to do is just, pull the covers over your head and hide from the world.
I love that, the quiet heroism of just continuing to move forward, and it makes Manjiro's story that much more inspiring.
Yeah.
Because he's got a long way to go, but he's figuring it out as he goes.
He is.
He's navigating this completely unfamiliar territory.
As a life, right?
Yeah. And for anyone listening, as you go about your day, here's something to think about.
Okay.
If you were in Manjiro's shoes, feeling so out of place, caught between those two worlds, how would you find your footing? How would you keep going? It's a question I think, it's worth thinking about.
Yeah.
Because on some level, I think we've all experienced that.
That longing.
That yearning to belong. That search for a place where we truly, truly feel at home.